everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to bring you guys my top 10 favorite contemporary and or paranormal romances that I read in 2021. So it is no secret that I definitely went down the adult romance rabbit hole this year. So because of that, I just had to split up my favorite romance books between 3 different videos. So this one, like I said, is about contemporary novels. I also have a couple of paranormal romances, but they take place during present day, so they are still contemporary. I also have a top 10 historical romances of 2021, and I have top 10 romance novellas that I read in 2021. So I hope that you guys are enjoying all of this content. And what I would actually love for you to do is press pause on this video, and I want you to leave a comment down below predicting what you think my top favorite romance is, or what you think my entire top 10 ranking will be. I am ranking these books from number 10 to number 1, which was low-key agonizing for me because I truly love these books pretty darn equally, but it definitely makes things more interesting when there's an actual ranking. So without further ado, let's just get into it. For number 10, I have The Redemption by Nikki Sloan. This is book 4 in her Filthy Rich American series. And yes, I would highly recommend reading those first 3 books before going into this one, because this is essentially the redemption arc of McAllister, who was kind of, sort of, maybe a villain in the first 3 books. He is such an intriguing character, and I was so excited to get to his romance, and it's everything that I ever could have hoped for. Basically, his love interest is Sophia, who is 30 years younger than him. I am not usually a fan of big age gaps like this. However, Nikki Sloan totally made it work. I fell for this couple so hard, so fast. They're just such a great match because McAllister is just a very smart businessman. He's seemingly very cold, and Sophia is just so smart and cunning as well, but in kind of a different way. She is somebody who knows everybody's business in their small town and in their business world. So their relationship kind of starts because McAllister's reputation is in ruins because of what happened at the end of the 3rd book of the series. And so she offers to help him redeem his image, and along the way, steamy times ensue. They fall for each other. There's also a really great grand gesture at the end that McAllister does for Sophia. It's just incredible, and I cannot wait to read even more from Nikki Sloan. So, number 9 on this list is, wow, this was a surprise for me. I really had no clue that I was going to love this book as much as I did, but this is Midnight with the Devil by Emma Castle. I need a physical copy of this book. I need physical copies of both of these books that I just mentioned. Why don't I? But this is a deal with the devil romance. We have Lucian, who is the devil, and we have Diana, whose father is in like stage 4 cancer. He is going to die soon. And so she goes to the hospital chapel, and she is desperately praying for God to save her father. Instead, the devil answers her prayer. And so they strike a deal that in exchange for Lucian completely curing her father, which he does, she has to spend every Friday night with him for the next 3 months. And it's heavily implied that sexy times will happen, and they do. And oh my God, this was just an incredible steamy romance. I loved the liberties that Emma Castle took with Lucian, like with the devil himself, and how heaven and hell works. And there's also this incredible redemption arc by the end. I adore the way this book ended. It was just everything. It's just like such a steamy romance, but also just so epic and beautiful. And clearly, I can't recommend it highly enough. It was just so good. So for number 8, we have 2 books that are part of the same series, but I truly loved these books so equally that I had to mention both of them for my number 8 spot. And that is the Stay a Spell series by Juliet Cross. Book 1 is Wolf Gone Wild. Book 2 is Don't Hex and Drive. And I am planning on reading book 3, which is Get Stitches, very soon. But Wolf Gone Wild, let's talk about this book first. This one is about Evie and Mateo. So this takes place in New Orleans. This is a paranormal romance series, and it surrounds the Savoy sisters, who are these sisters that are witches. And Mateo comes to Evie because she is a very powerful hex breaker. He has a hex that has been put on him where he cannot shift into his wolf form, which is not good because now his wolf form, known as Alpha, has taken over his mind and has these like very vivid, violent, and carnal thoughts, basically. That's one of the things I loved about this book so much is Alpha. Like, this inner monologue that his wolf form has is so freaking hilarious, but also kind of sweet because the second that Mateo meets Evie, Alpha is obsessed with Evie and just like wants to be with her and wants to have sex with her immediately. And it's just like, it's so fun, so entertaining. But there is a little bit of like a suspenseful plot as well in terms of like who put this hex on Mateo. It's amazing. And then with Don't Hex and Drive, this one is about Isadora, who is one of Evie's sisters. And we have Devraj, who is literally one of the hottest heroes that I have ever read about in a romance novel. He is a very old vampire, and he is known as a Stygorn, a legendary vampire warrior who operates in the shadows. And so there's a little bit of a suspenseful plot in this one as well, having to do with the bad vampires that Devraj is hunting. And Devraj not only is a hot vampire, but he also was a Bollywood star, like a movie star. And like, so good. Like, Devraj is truly what makes this book. Like, yes, I enjoyed Isadora, our heroine, but Devraj is everything. So yeah, I love this series so much. I can't wait to read more of the books as they come out. I believe there are at least like 2 or 3 more books that Juliet Cross is writing for this series. Next, for number 7, we have a book that came in right around the end of the year and truly blew me away. This is the first of 2 books that I'm mentioning by the same author. This is Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. The sexy Christmas romance of my dreams. Oh my God. So we have Stella. She was incarcerated for a few years. She just got out of prison a couple months ago, so she's definitely trying to rebuild her life after that. And she comes across this disastrous window display at this department store called Vivant. And she's just kind of puzzling over this window display. This man, Aiden, comes up to her and asks her her honest opinion about it. And she lays into it, and Aiden is just like instantly charmed by her, and Stella is immediately just taken aback by Aiden because he's just so funny and quirky and charming, and like he immediately tells her weird stories about his family members back home. And, you know, so there's definitely the grump sunshine thing going on with Stella being the grumpy one, Aiden being the sunshiny character. I believe Aiden is also based off of Ted Lasso, which I have not seen that show yet, but I've heard good things about it. Aiden is the perfect man, I think. He is the definition of a Cinedom. He's a total cinnamon roll hero. Like I said, very sunshiny, very quirky, sweet, loving. But in the bedroom, he turns so dominant, and he is like a master at dirty talking. I mean, we know Tessa Bailey always brings the dirty talking, but it's on another level in this book, truly. While aspects of this book are very funny, I also really loved the side characters, like the different people that work at Vivant, for instance. This is also a very emotional story, especially having to do with Stella and her trying to rebuild her life, and, you know, the reasoning behind why she went to prison in the first place, and her trying to heal from that while falling in love with this man, Aiden, and it's so good. I cried at the end. The ending is everything. It's amazing. Like, literally everything you could want from a Christmas romance is in this book. So for number 6, we have The Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Danan. This is the follow-up to The Roommate. I was so pumped for this book because I knew that Naomi was going to be our main character. She's someone that is heavily featured in the first book, The Roommate, and I just immediately loved her character. She's just a boss-ass bitch. At the beginning of this book, we see that she is now a retired porn star. That first book is about a friend of hers who is still a porn star. But now she is running this like sex education business with the 2 main characters from book 1. And so then we have Ethan, who is a rabbi at his own synagogue. and he is noticing that attendance has just been dismal to the synagogue. And so he decides to hire Naomi to come give a seminar about modern dating to attract younger people to the synagogue. So this is like the perfect opposite attract romance. We have Naomi, who is definitely very guarded. She's a boss-ass bitch, like I said. And we have Ethan, who is just this very sweet rabbi. And so her solo journey throughout this book, as well as Ethan's solo journey, was really great to read about, but also seeing Ethan chip away at her emotional walls, it was just beautiful. I loved it so much. This also is one of the most like modern and refreshing romances that I've read in a while. I loved the different like seminar sessions that Naomi was holding at the synagogue. Like, I feel like I learned so much from her seminars, and the romance is great. I will say this is not as steamy of a romance as you might think that it is, but the steam that is in it is immaculate. So clearly, I can't recommend it highly enough. I cannot wait to see what Rosie Danan comes out with next, because I just adored this book so much. So next up, for number 5, we have the book that has completely solidified Tessa Bailey as one of my new favorite romance authors. That is It Happened One Summer. This is a book that came out this year, just like Window Shopping did. This is an amazing fish out of water, opposites attract romance, and it was definitely inspired by Schitt's Creek. This is basically if Alexis Rose actually got a happily ever after, and it's everything. We have Piper. She is an LA party girl. Things go wrong one night, and so Piper's stepfather sends both Piper and her younger sister to this really small town, Westport, Washington, where Piper's father had a piece of property and it's still in the family. And so she shows up to this really rundown building in Westport, and she's now trying to make a life for herself. Meanwhile, we have Brendan here, who is a very grumpy, very broody hero. He is also a fisherman. Like I said, they could not be more opposite. And the way that these two characters fall for each other, not only that, but the journey that Piper goes on is incredible. I cried numerous times while reading this because of Stella and what she goes through and how she lays down roots in this small town. Like, there's a scene in particular that I can recall where Piper meets her paternal grandmother, and it's everything. It is so good. And of course the steam is there. Like, there's a couple scenes that live in my head rent-free from this book. Like, so freaking good. I can't recommend it highly enough. I am so excited for the sequel to come out, which is going to center around Piper's younger sister. Oh, so good. Next up, for number 4, we have a book and an author that completely blew me away. I had no idea that I was going to love this book as much as I did. That is Learn My Lesson by Katie Robert. So this was my very first book by Katie Robert. I discovered this author in 2021 and I have not looked back since. This is technically book 2 in her Wicked Villain series, though you definitely don't have to read book 1. I did not read book 1 just because the kinks didn't appeal to me. But this is a polyamorous reimagining of Meg, Hades, and Hercules from the Disney movie Hercules. But though this takes place in a made-up world, it's also very much a contemporary setting. Like, there's no magic going on or anything like that. Like, Hades is a human in this. So basically, Meg and Hades have been in a relationship for a while and things have turned pretty toxic. Hades owns like this entire territory within the city that they all live in, and so part of that territory is this sex club. And so Hercules shows up one night. He is this young, sunshiny guy, the opposite of both Meg and Hades. And so Hades decides to start playing some mind games with both Meg and Hercules. But along the way, Hades actually ends up falling for Hercules, and Meg and Hades fix their relationship. And it's just beautiful the way that this polyamorous relationship works out throughout the book. I was not prepared for how like mesmerizing the writing was. Like, I just could not stop reading this book. I was just blown away by how good it was, especially because I've heard a lot of people talk about this series, but I hadn't heard anyone give any of the books in this series 5 stars. So I was not prepared for how Katie Roberts' writing personally affected me. But yeah, like it's just incredible. And like, of course, the steamy scenes are just chef's kiss. So good. Like, these three characters truly belong together in a polyamorous relationship, and like, I will never shut up about this book. Like, I already can't wait to reread this at some point. All right, guys, we have made it to my top 3 favorite contemporary and or paranormal romances that I read in 2021. So for number 3, this one might be surprising to some of you, especially if you haven't been following me for that long. But this is the 6th book in a paranormal romance series that I can tell you now is one of my all-time favorite series ever at this point. So this is Succubus Revealed by Richelle Mead. You might recall Richelle Mead as being the author to the Vampire Academy series. She also wrote the Bloodline series, which is a spin-off of Vampire Academy. Now this series, the Succubus Blues or the Georgina Kincaid series, is definitely an adult paranormal romance series centering around our main character, Georgina Kincaid. She was a mortal human at the beginning of her life, but things went very wrong for her, and she made a deal with a demon to become a succubus. If you don't know what a succubus is, they are female demons that feed off of the life force of mortal men when having spicy times with them. So in book 1, we see her meet this guy, Seth, who is a mortal. He is the author of her favorite book series ever. It sounds kind of like a romantic suspense mystery thriller book series. And so over the course of these 6 books, we go through this forbidden romance between the two of them, because if they were ever to have sex with one another, she would take some of his life force away every time, you know? So they can't be together. They can't really be together. There's also really interesting plots in each book having to do with like a different mystery and a different like villain or creature or something like that. This 6th book truly took things to another level. The plot of this book goes in a completely different direction that completely changes how you view the books prior to it. And there's also an amazing redemption arc for Georgina, our main character. I sobbed. I was sobbing, crying, reading the end of this book. I was not prepared. So good. So this is one of those series that also has like a dry and sarcastic sense of humor. I love that about Richelle Mead. So I laughed my way through this series. I cried my way, especially through this book. It's just so good. It's everything that you could want from an epic paranormal romance, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Number 2 on this list has to be Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This is the first book that I read by this author. I'm so glad that I finally read it. It had been on my TBR for quite some time, and I actually read it because I was doing a reading vlog where I read some of Bree from In Love and Words' favorite romances ever. And I know that this is one of her favorite books ever, that she's reread it like numerous times, and like it's truly as amazing as she says it is. This is like an epic small town romance with suspense elements. Like, you could almost call this a romantic suspense book. So this is about Archer, of course. He went through something really traumatic in his past, so he is no longer able to speak. Not only is he mute, but he can't speak even if he wanted to. So we have Bree, who moves to the small town that Archer lives in. Archer is definitely a recluse. He does not interact with the people in the town, and for very good reason. So Bree moves to the small town because she's running from something from her past. And from the second Bree and Archer meet, like, you are just rooting for them to be together. Their interactions literally were making me squeal with delight. Like, I was just so giddy, and I couldn't wait for the next scene that these two characters would be together. Their romance is truly just stunning. I cried a lot throughout this book. Yeah, like, it's just, it's everything that you could want from an emotional small town romance. I don't even know what else to say about it, but Archer like has to be one of my top book boyfriends at this point. I adore him with my whole heart. He must be protected at all costs. It even says on the back that this is one of the top 100 romance novels of all time on Goodreads, and for very good reason. All right, everybody, we made it to my #1 top favorite contemporary romance of 2021. Every time I think about this book, I just swoon. This is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. I am so happy that I finally read this book this year. So if you don't know anything about Mariana Zapata, she is the queen of extreme slow burn romances. This book is like at least 650 pages. Insane. This is about Aiden and Vanessa. This is actually a marriage of convenience, which is amazing. You don't see too many of those with contemporary romances. That's definitely more common with historicals. So Aiden is a professional football player, and Vanessa has been his assistant for the past couple of years, but she decided to quit her job because she wants to commit all of her time to her freelance work. She is an artist. And Aiden does not want to let Vanessa go. And actually what ends up happening is that he proposes a marriage of convenience because he's from Canada and he will not be able to stay in the United States unless he gets married. And he is such a grumpy and broody hero, and it's such a slow burn in terms of them even becoming friends in the first place, let alone lovers by the end. Just like all of her books that I've read 3 of her books at this point, they don't become lovers until like the last 50 pages. Like, you gotta wait. You gotta read their entire story. It's truly so epic. I literally put in my Goodreads review that Mariana Zapata is ruining me for other romance authors. That is how much I loved this book in particular and how much I love her as an author. I just feel like no one writes romance like she does. And there were moments in this that made me like internally scream and cry, and like the moment when they finally kiss, like I was just dying on the inside. It's worth every page. I also could have read like 100 more pages about this couple easily. Like, I don't know how she does that because, I mean, as we all know, these books are ginormous. Like, Vanessa and Aiden are like the moment. They are the blueprint. And there's a quote that I want to read from this book specifically, from Aiden, the hero. He says, "I don't know anything about relationships, Van, but I know I love you. I know I've waited my entire life to love you." Like, what? What? Like, some of the things this man says throughout this book, I die. I cannot wait to reread this at some point. It is just that fantastic. So that is going to be it for my top 10 romances or contemporary romances that I read in 2021. I hope that you all enjoyed. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to tell me about your top favorite contemporary romances that you read this year. I always love getting recommendations from you all. I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!